People often think that light and dark are equals, that good cannot exist without evil, heroes cannot exist without villains, angels without demons, etc. But in reality, one is merely the result of the absence of the other. For if there's no light, then darkness falls. For if there are no heroes, villains run rampant. For if there are no gods, then the butcher rises. The 2012 run of Thor, written by Jason Aaron, was considered a modern classic in the world of superhero comics. To this day, it's considered one of the best runs for the character in an already stellar collection of stories from the Thunder God, spanning all the way back to the early 60s. The art is stellar, the story is engaging, and the themes it offers makes the first half of this run a really engaging read, and it has had a lasting impact on the Thor mythos and Thor as a character even now. But the main thing it's known for is introducing one of Thor's most terrifying enemies and one of Marvel's greatest villains, Gorr the God Butcher. Gorr is an absolutely brilliant villain, both in design and in themes. His design is intentionally scary, a pale, naked alien man with shadows wrapped around him like a specter of death, which is kind of what he is in a way. He's an intimidating presence in the original run, a cold, clinical method to his madness, yet it's driven by a never-ending, unquenchable hatred for the gods. His hatred drives him to enslave countless immortals for centuries, building a bomb that could destroy every god that ever was and ever will be. Gorr, and by proxy Jason Aaron's influence on Thor as a whole, was so influential that the Butcher, alongside Jason's other big contribution to the Thor mythos, Jane Foster's Mighty Thor, were both adapted to the screen in an embarrassing train wreck of an adaptation known as Thor Love and Thunder, a movie where everything about these stories were watered down or just straight up removed, to the point where these characters aren't even recognizable from their comic counterparts anymore. But that's a topic to be saved for a much wider MCU Thor retrospective that I have planned for much farther down the line. But for now, I want to focus on Gorr's story within the confines of his original appearance back in 2012, and what it was about him that made him immediately cement himself as not only one of Thor's best villains, but one of the best Marvel villains in general. Today we're going to be talking about Gorr, his ascension to godhood, and his inevitable descent into madness. Despite being known as the terrifying, sadistic hunter of all things immortal, Gorr was once a man like any other. Born on a nameless desert planet, broken, desolate, and hostile, Gorr grew up a member of a race forever faithful and obedient to their gods that had never answered their prayers or heeded their calls. Gorr was forced to watch his mother, wife, then eventually his children succumb to grisly fates. And every time he was told by his dying loved ones to have faith in the gods, that they would still look after them, a belief that Gorr was slowly losing faith in, all the while they crumbled away on a desolate planet in the middle of nowhere space. Compare this to Thor's introduction in the beginning of this story, him answering the call of a young girl in a similarly deserted, nameless barren planet deprived of water, and bringing with him a storm strong enough to flood the rivers again. Thor is meant to be living proof of the outlook that Gorr carries with him to the grave, that gods are selfish, greedy beings that don't care for the lives of the mortals beneath them. Thor is the exception of that. He brings hope to those around him instead of despair, gives rather than takes, inspires instead of encouraging worship. If a god even half as generous as Thor were to have descended upon Gorr's planet in their time of need, then the man probably wouldn't have taken the path he ultimately did. But instead of Thor, a wounded golden god crashes onto his planet. And the first thing the god says, the first thing Gorr's ever heard any god say to him in his entire life, was to ask for help. Him for help. The man that had been asking them for help for years. This transforms Gorr, being the final nail in the coffin to push him over the edge, turning a broken man with a broken faith in the pantheons above to a bitter, rageful man whose anger at the gods for letting his loved ones die turned him into something immortal. In this moment, Gorr dies, and thus was born the God Butcher. Gorr as the Butcher is terrifying. We see the effects of his work both in process, when he's fighting a much younger Thor, and the aftermath, the corpses he leaves in his wake after battling much weaker gods. He doesn't just kill them. He does, well, exactly what his name implies. He butchers them, slowly, methodically, surgically. He tortures them just for fun, to make them feel a fraction of the suffering that their ignorance had brought upon him. His hatred for these immortals turns him into what can only be described as a serial killer for the gods, a boogeyman that hunts them down. He tortures one individually until they rat out where the rest of their pantheon is hiding, just to travel there and slaughter the rest of them as well, slowly and gruesomely, like a butcher shop. But, thanks to his scuffles with a much younger Thor, he realized that no matter how he sliced it, He would never be able to achieve his dream if he were to continue to act alone. So, instead of forever slithering throughout the shadows of space, he travels to the far future, and in some cruel sense of irony, enslaves gods for millennia to create a bomb capable of destroying every god all at once, every god who's ever lived or ever will, with his sick and twisted magnum opus, the God Bomb. I think what makes Thor and Gorr's dynamic so interesting and possibly one of the best hero versus villain contrasts in comics is that both of them, in some way or another, are afraid of each other and what they represent. Gorr's philosophy of all gods being selfish and different immortals is a sentiment that haunts Thor long after the Butcher is defeated, because deep down he knows that he's right. In the world of Marvel Comics, gods are no hard thing to come by, especially on Earth. Earth has probably more collections of pantheons than probably any other singular planet in this universe, let's be honest. And among all of them, from the Olympians to the Egyptians to the Devas, or Slavic gods, how many of them would you truly call heroic? What makes Gorr's argument so paramount is that we, being familiar with this universe, are aware of the sins many of the gods of this world have committed. Khonshu's constant manipulation of Mark Spector, Zeus and his many affairs, Lord, don't even get me started on what Gaia's gotten up to. Even Thor himself was one of these more selfish gods. He once lived the life of an arrogant young god that would clash with Gorr many times, and it was through banishment and humility that forced him to grow into a better man and a better god. But unfortunately, the rest of the gods throughout the universe have not had those opportunities of self-reflection. Thor knows better than anyone that these types of gods are more common than not because he was one. His father was one. He's fought against some of the most selfish and powerful and evil of gods that exist throughout the known universe. And even after encouraging both his past and future selves to prove Gorr wrong, ultimately the truth in the Butcher's words overwhelms Thor, leading him down a path of unworthiness, separated from his hammer and his divinity. On the flip side, Gorr descends further into madness because of Thor's interventions with his plan. He realizes that he can no longer fully realize his dream alone, so he creates unstoppable, sentient shadow monsters to help spread his horrific craft of god slaying across space, and spends centuries enslaving gods to build their own demise, keeping Thor alive for all of this for all time, for the sake of wanting him to see his vision through to the end, to show the only noble god he's ever met true despair, right before he wipes out his entire kind all throughout space-time. But in this pursuit of a godless age, he inadvertently makes sure that he can never fully realize his dream as long as he's alive. The All-Black, the first symbiote, son of the eldritch god Null, changes his body, alters it, and makes him ageless. As Volstagg says to him, "Look at yourself. Look at what that weapon has done to you. You've been alive for thousands of years, murdering as you please. You've raised worlds and built your own. You've put gods in chains. What are you, if not a god yourself?" The only thing that Gorr hates more than gods is being seen as a god himself, even though, inevitably, that's what he becomes. A god of slaughter, of death and decay, of hypocrisy. He despises the idea of being seen as a god so much that he kills his own wife, or rather a manifestation of her, for calling him a god. Her god. The only one she's ever worshipped. The words of Volstagg haunt him so much that he's willing to kill what's left of his family to prove his point, devolving into a madman who wants to reshape the world in his image, to play God himself, so that no one else ever will. Ultimately, the gods were never Gorr's worst enemy. It was never the deeds or lack of deeds from the immortal that led to his demise. It was his own bitterness, his hatred that was never satiated, a vengeance that was never satisfied. He could never admit that enough was enough. He let the Necrosword consume him, change him over thousands of years until he was nothing left but a god of his own, the loneliest, angriest god of them all. In the end, it wasn't a god who defeated the God Butcher, but it was the last shred of Gorr's humanity, the lonely man who just wanted to live a peaceful life, to give the gods he nearly slaughtered a chance to redeem themselves, to bring about an age where no prayer would ever go unanswered again. Whew, man, that one was a bit heavier than usual, huh? Far cry from the Mario stuff for sure. Either way, thank you for watching. If you're one of my regular viewers, I know this is kind of out of the ordinary for me. Though I did do that Marvel Rivals video the other day, so I guess not really anymore. If you're a comic book fan and found me through this video, I hope you stick around. I do mostly videos of Mario, but I pride myself on making videos on all sorts of different franchises. And I plan to be making more videos on comic book characters in the future. Gorr is one of my all-time favorite villains, so it was only a matter of time before I made a video dedicated to him specifically. It's really a shame how much they butchered him in Love and Thunder, no pun intended, I guess. That movie had so much potential to be one of the best movies in the MCU, and they dropped the ball on it so hard, and it pisses me off to this day. But, you know, like I said before, that's a topic for a future video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if there's any other comic book heroes or villains you'd like to see me cover in the future. There's definitely no short supply of them, I'll tell you that much. But that's all from me, and take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next one.